for a few more minutes.
Land, wenn Tiere ist, da geht's halt lustig zu. Da sind die Bauern, Kreuzviertel ist ein Mäuel oder ist ein Bau. Da sind die Bauern, Kreuzviertel ist ein Mäuel oder ist ein Bau. Da kommt ein Tier mit langen, krummen Dinglich wie ein Ries. Der sagt jetzt da, oder wenn's nicht geht's, dann haben wir eng ans Ries. Der sagt jetzt da, oder wenn's nicht geht's, dann haben wir eng ans Ries. Kann heute ist das wirklich gesagt, es macht eine haut den anderen Back und Groschen mit Stillborn. Eine haut den anderen Back und Groschen mit Stillborn. Weil hier war halt zu Ende, wenn war alles grummelig. Eine haut zum anderen gesagt, die Tiere, die war schein. Und eine haut zum anderen gesagt, die Tiere, die war schein.
Here, come here.
Okay, so just to welcome you guys all here today. Thanks for joining us. Some of you are in warmer climates, and I'm very jealous. Today it's going to get up, they say 25, but we're going to have to take our sweaters off and stuff. Yeah, usually we like to have an open house for the German-Bohemian Heritage Society. We've been doing them for a long time, and I've been on the board for about 10 years. A lot of fun to, you know, be a part of this and share some of my experiences and then learning from others as well. But who would have known a year of COVID and nobody getting together? The last time we actually got together as a group was a year ago in February for our open house, and then as most things, everything was canceled this past year, and we haven't had a chance to get together and see people in person. Can everybody hear me okay? Just kind of thumbs up. So, all right, good. Good to check that. So yeah, so I just want to, what I'm gonna do is we've got 3 different things we're gonna do. We'll kind of introductions here, tell you about what we have here at our research center, what we can help people with their ancestry researching and stuff with German-Bohemian stuff. We kind of created a little tutorial kind of thing. Gary Wilczek's been going through our collection and kind of recategorizing, numbering things, and we're going to have a new list of all the materials available on our website by this next week. And so kind of updating everything we've had, and then we'll end with kind of a slideshow telling a little bit more about German-Bohemians, the history, where this is, and kind of go back to some of the basics or new things for people. And then, you know, just kind of share some slides on that. And towards the end, we can ask questions. There's a chat bar on the right that people can also type in some chat questions, and we'll go through those at the end. Okay, so let me go back to, I'm just going to share the screen again. Okay. So again, welcome. And one thing I wanted to do is just kind of let people know that a few of our board members and people very active in the organization have passed away in the past year. One of our previous board members, Rita Sabatino, was on the board when I started, and she passed away in September, followed by George Glatzbach, who was very well known here in the New Ulm area of Minnesota and very connected with a lot of organizations. And he was kind of our PR guy. He really helped out with telling people about different events that we had, and really helped with the success of things. And then in just this past week, a little over a week ago, we lost a good supporter of the German-Bohemian Heritage Society, George Portner. He was 97 years old and one of the founding members as well. And so just kind of, it's been neat to know people and share this. And it's just going to stop for a second. All right, so you can see me over my shoulder here is kind of this Heimat tract of you know, from German-Bohemians, and a lot of the original members of the organization have this matching tract. It was born in a singing group and this kind of stuff. This one back here we call George because that's the stuff George Fortner had donated a few years ago. And over my other shoulder back in the corner is Angie. So we use those for examples of different tract, and it's kind of fun that a few years ago I went down to Chicago to give a talk about German Bohemians and immigration, and then one was on culture and heritage, and so we thought, well, let's bring along this stuff. So we hauled these mannequins and stands all the way to Chicago and walked around in the hotel and up the elevator carrying this stuff all over, but it was really kind of fun. So we were traveling in a way with George and Angie. Just checking some things. I think everybody's muted right now. And if you want to say something with questions in the future, you'll have to unmute yourself, but it just works better for feedback and stuff. Okay, so yeah, so getting to know George, I stopped out at their farm. So George was passed away at 97, Angie's 94, very involved with the organization. George was treasurer for us for 18 years and did a great job. I went out to their farm a little over a year ago when we didn't have COVID, and I thought, well, you know, they were just there and kind of, well, can I get a picture of you too? And you know, they weren't fixed up, and George's like, well, what are you gonna want this for? So he was worried I'd post that picture on here, so I won't do that today, but maybe I'll share that in the future. Okay, so then the next part, I'll just share a little bit more as far as what we've got going on, what's new here at the organization. Okay, and like I mentioned, the last time we got together was with our open house last year, and actually, so I've been the president of the organization for 3 years, and the first few months of being in that role, we got notified that we needed to move after being in one location for over 20 years. And so then we looked all over the place, trying to find a new home for our collection of materials and books. And we found a place here at the Grand Center for Arts and Culture. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But in the Grand, we had a couple different rooms on different levels, and then we were able to make some changes. So this is just from the open house last year, a couple of pictures of some of our members and visitors that were here. And then in the Grand, there's a big room downstairs where they have music and entertainment and things that we're able to use that for our open house to do a presentation like what we're doing here online today. And so hopefully all the technical stuff here works well. This is something I've never done before. And so we're all kind of learning today to get this working, and then also stream it on YouTube for those who are not able to look at this. And then it's also going to be recorded for future reviews. So we're at the Grand in downtown New Ulm. This is the Grand in the center of the picture here. And we've got this beautiful room on the 3rd floor. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. So all of the windows on the top floor there facing the street is now our main part of our German-Bohemian Heritage Society Research Center and Library. And it's also accessible via elevator, so it's handicapped accessible in the back of the building. You go around to the left and there's an elevator inside there. So really state of the art and a great place to house our stuff. The Grand also has a long history in New Ulm. There was a Minnesota House, first hotel built on this site in 1856. And then a second one was built a few years later after the first one burned. And then I think there was another fire in 1875. And this is the building that survives from that time. And they added the third floor where we are around 1899. So it's kind of a fun building where they've got different studios and stuff for artists and people. And they've got 4 pillars studio downstairs with different art and culture exhibits. So when you come to New Ulm, if you ever get the chance, if you're not local, come and check us out. And we've got other things like this display cabinet on the right, shows some of the artifacts and old pictures and information that we'll keep updating. And then this is the 3rd floor at the Grand, and our entrance is straight ahead in the photo. And like I mentioned, this summer, this room became available. So then we had to remove everything. And I tell you, it was a ton of work, but it was rewarding in the fact that we were able to take this old shelving. Here's some of our current board members, Gary Wilczek, who's been working on the collection, Harvey Stoddick, and then we were lucky enough to get some old library shelving donated to us when we moved here, but we didn't have room for it all, and we still have more that we could use. So we've got one of our board members where we stored it on his farm. And so when we got to this new location, we had to reconfigure it and put it back together. So it was quite a process, but it came together, and I think you'll be pleased with what we have. This is just some of the boxes and tons of things that we've had to go through. And I think moving overall worked out to be a really good thing, because now we have probably a better idea of everything we have. And we're still working on sorting through more things and adding to the collection from things that have been donated, but it's better and more accessible than it has been for a number of years. And this is, kind of the room where we've got a area for a computer and research on one side, and then kind of the books and stuff on the other side. And you can see we've got a lot of different maps on the walls and examples of different tracht or clothing that people wore, and those types of things. And then as the German-Bohemian Society, our job is to promote and develop and maintain just German-Bohemian culture and heritage. It's something that is unique. It doesn't exist anymore as far as the homeland places with changes after World War II. So it's learning about that and helping people with searching for their ancestors and sharing of that information. And one of the projects we want to do is put together a program where we've got a lot of great materials here for research in English, but we do have a lot of stuff that's printed in German and some in Czech, that it'd be nice to take some of the more important things and translate some of those books and materials or parts of them. And so we're putting together a plan of some of those things to help make it more reachable for a lot of people who are not multilingual and able to do that. But we've got some great books, like this one is kind of a lot of people who founded the organization are from Western Bohemia, Bischof Teinitz, and there's just a whole book here, very big, tons of great information, but all in German, but wonderful history that we'd like to take parts of this, maybe all of it someday, and translate it. One of the things that we've been involved with was organizing tours and study of the homeland, and I've been kind of doing that on the side to help people to travel there, can share information with helping people travel on their own, and organize tours that people can join. And then publishing newsletters several times a year. So upcoming events, we're hoping to have a spring meeting, but with the way things are going, I think that's probably unlikely that will happen, but it's currently scheduled for May 15th, and we'll update that in the next newsletter for those members who get that. In July, New Ulm is still planning the Bavarian Blast, and we're planning to have a German-Bohemian float in the parade on that Sunday, the 18th, so look for us there. A picnic on Saturday, September 11th, back up at the pavilion in Herman Heights Park overlooking New Ulm, and then a fall meeting planned for October 23rd in 2021. Our next speaker that we've got planned is Barbara Magus, and she's from the Sleepy Eye area and has a very big family, I think 16 children. I've met a lot of them, great group of people. She's written a couple of books about raising her family and living in this area, but she's also has a unique perspective from husband who's German-Bohemian, and she's got more of a Czech background. So a lot of relations back to the homeland, and she's made some trips there as well. So we're looking forward to hearing from her as soon as we can have a meeting. And then also another upcoming event is the International German Genealogical Conference. This is in July. They were planning to have one in Cincinnati this summer, and that got canceled. And so they came up with the virtual one, and that one, I'm going to be one of the speakers talking about German-Bohemian immigration. So that'll be a recorded presentation where we can go into more detail than what we're able to do here today. So yeah, and then as you're taking a look at things, our website has a lot of information for books and materials for sale, and we'll be updating things as far as more information as far as the lists of what we have to search and look through here. And so we're working on those types of things. We also have a donation button, and we'll be talking about the different projects that we want to do. One of them is the digitizing and translating of materials. We also could use a new computer to help people with research and be able to store the information we have. We've got some outdated things here. So we'll kind of put it on our website that you can donate to a specific thing or general stuff if that's something that you can do. And then also I have a separate website that you can email me about travel information, upcoming tours. Okay, so now what we're going to do is switch to I'm going to share a little video about, here, hang on a second. I'm going to share a little video, kind of a tutorial of our collection here. We're kind of not going through the whole thing, but a little bit on, what we have, and Gary Wilczek starts that out. He's done a wonderful job going through this. So I have to go back into sharing the screen and pull that up for you. Gary Wilczek with the German-Bohemian Heritage Society, here to tell us a little bit more about our collection here at our research center.
Hello, this is our relocated, renumbered, recategorized library that houses about 1,400 different books. And if you include the periodicals, we're close to 2,000 separate items. And I'd like to just briefly show you what we've got here. By category, we're starting here on the left, the reference section. And we have a reference section for German-Bohemian area, a reference section for maps, and a reference section for local. Next, we've got homeland and village history. So when we're interested in something from the homeland, when the history book doesn't really relate to a specific village or a kreis, I've got them listed as homeland history. Then when we know about a particular area or a kreis or village, I've got these also in this village kreis section. A lot of valuable information on here for a researcher that is interested in a particular homeland, village, or kreis. Other sections back behind me here are German-Bohemian lifestyle. In our collections, we found so many books that relate to the lifestyle of a German-Bohemian. So I've got them categorized here. Also, a lot is written about the expulsion after World War II. So I've got those separate, in a separate category. Followed by German-Bohemians abroad. These are the Bohemians that are not in Bohemia now, or some other place, like in New Zealand or in America. So that's a separate section. Another popular section is local history. So for the locals, we have a couple hundred books just on the particular area of the local Brown County area. Followed by our family history section. We have over 400 family history sections. Family histories that have been donated by individual families in the area. And I've got them all listed in alphabetical order. So that's family history. Then here on the far back side, we have a section on Germany. It's not really Bohemia, but Germany. And being that it borders Bohemia, we have a lot of interesting books just on Germany itself. Followed by a small section, Sudetenland, World War II. There's those books that were written for that unique period from the 30s into the 40s during World War II that talk about just the Sudetenland and its involvement in World War II. And then also there's another small section on genealogy for those that are interested in particulars like Ellis Island. There's some books on that particular area. Also, we've got secondary books. Those are the books that really didn't fit into the unique areas that I just described, but yet are interesting to have. And a lot of them are like the cookbooks, a lot of interesting cookbooks from around. Followed by our GBHS history section. We have such a rich history of how the society started and the early leadership that we categorize that. We've got photo albums and CDs and DVDs. Also categories of Paul Kretsch when he started in the 1980s, getting the society going. So that's GBHS history. Then we have newspapers. A lot of people donated history of related into the newspapers. So we've got New Ulm, Sleepy Eye, Springfield, Comfrey, and so on. Followed by the periodical section. We've got close to 600 different journals on periodicals, Heimatbriefs. We have the Germanic Genealogy Journal, the Nasa Rodina, and many others located here on this shelf as well as in the storage area.
Okay, we gave you a quick peek at what we have in our research center, and now we're just going to take a little closer look at how you would find things coming in for a visit and doing some research on either Bohemia, your ancestry, or some of the records we have here.
Okay, so the good news at our library is that everything we have in our possession is inventory and is in this library catalog. And to make any sense out of that, we organized it into all these categories that you can see. So maybe we'll run through these. So we have a reference section. I did that mainly to follow our Dewey Decimal System. So most public libraries have a reference section. Well, a lot of our German books belong in a section like that. So that's a reference section. Next in order of importance would be Homeland history and village Kreis history. We have a lot of books in the related to those categories. The Homeland history is including those books that don't really directly to an area or a village, but talk about the history, followed by our village Kreis section. That it includes those books that relate specifically to an area. We find a lot of interest by researchers who want to know about a certain village. Next is lifestyle. There are so many books related to our German-Bohemian lifestyle that we created that section, just like expulsion. Some are interested in that category, followed by German-Bohemians that are not in America or not in Bohemia, but somewhere else. We don't have many, but there are some, for example, like in Puhoi in New Zealand. Another category is local history. There is a lot of submission of articles relating to local history that are of interest. We've got all of those inventory. Family history, we have over 400 entries in our local family history. And then we have a section on Germany, Sudetenland, World War II, genealogy. We also have some like secondary books, as well as German-Bohemian history, newspaper section, many periodicals, and many old books. We also have artifacts like our tract and a concertina and so on. We also have VHS cassettes that are now being converted over to a digital version. We also have a lot of oral interviews that are done audio and video. And then we also have a collection of other digital GBHS inventory like GBHS music and so on. And then other equipment in storage. So yeah, that's it. So the first big section here in the library catalog is our reference section. And those are that's the area where you would first search, and just like in a reference section of the library. But there was so much in our reference section that I decided to divide that into a German-Bohemian section, a map section, and then local reference section.
Yeah, and in the local, I see you have some things of genealogical resources in different areas of Germany as well.
Yes. So this picture shows a typical outlay of our catalog where you can look by book number, category, subcategory, author, title, description, page number, and the date it was published. It's always good because you're not sure what information you're armed with when you come to the library. So this picture shows the order of that information. Okay, now this slide gives an example of where you would find the baptismal records, and that's why that would be in the reference section. So the reference section, every book in that section has a green label on it. You can see it's reference local, so you don't have to worry about losing that book. And this is book number GB725.PET. And each book number has a alphanumeric system where you start with GB and then the book number and then a suffix letter. And this refers to the German-Bohemian section, and then a 3-digit number, and PET is some kind of a describer. This is for standing for St. Peter and Paul. So this is a baptismal record book. So in this baptismal book, here's an example of what you see. So Wade just picked out a page at random to show you the information that's in there. And Wade, do you think you hear
on this page, we've got like 1860 at the top right. So these are some baptismal records from 1860 in and around southern Minnesota, including Mankato and New Ulm municipal region. All right, so this is just a close-up of the bottom left of the 2 pages we just previously saw. We were looking just for an example of a German-Bohemian name. And here we've got Catherine Holm here, who was baptized on the 8th of August in 1860, and she was the daughter of John Holm and Barbara, could be Ubo, we're not sure of that last name right now. But then it was kind of fun looking above here. You've got a Lorenz Kalb, also being baptized here, and then the sponsors for this were John Warta and Magdalena Warta. And we've got quite a bit of history on Magdalena. Survived some attacks here in New Ulm and long history, so it's kind of, and also German-Bohemian people. So it was kind of fun just to find this record by random. So you never know what you're going to find here. And the next few slides will just show you a few examples of some of the things we have here in book form. These are the Czech immigration passenger lists, often very helpful in finding finding names of people who immigrated from Bohemia under the Austrian Empire. We've also got Brum County naturalization records and just a sample page of that here.
Although that refers to real numbers that you would be using up at MHS in the research library there. The good news is that GBHS has some of those reals, but we don't really have a reader to view that. But at least it does record the name of some helpful information.
Yeah, so if you head up to the Minnesota History Center or other locations that have this, it's a constant reference of where you can find the actual record or the microfilm of it.
Or if you happen to have a 35 millimeter reader printer in your back pocket, you could use this for that.
Perfect, yeah.
I mean,
Ships of your ancestors. So there are other places to find this stuff, but if you're looking through the Batra books and you find your ancestor's name, another source we have real close to it is these ship records, and you can look in there and see if you can find a picture of your ship where your ancestors came from.
We also have at least 2 other ship books. One is a book of ships that just shipped out of Bremen, Germany, I believe, and then a couple of other older books. Now here's a few valuable additions to our reference section. The one on the left is called the Königreich Böhmen, and it's actually the Bohemian Kingdom and all of its counties. It's kind of taking an inventory of all the districts of Bohemia from 1833 to 1849. There's 16 volumes in all. I think we have at least 15 of those 16 written by Johann Gottfried Sommer. And it's all in German, but it's kind of sought after because it can show you the life of a typical Bohemian back in those days.
This is one of the things that I'm thinking would be fun to find a translation or work on a project of translating this to learn more about just this history from the mid-19th century.
Because when you try and research your family history, you want to know, well, what were they doing? And when you take an inventory of what they had, you can kind of tell what their lifestyle was like. So that's a valuable addition if you can read German. And you're right, Wade, if we could only get that translated, that would help. The top right is the title page for one of Karen Hobbs's books that she contributed to the Society, the Tax Rolls of 1654. She translated all those tax rolls for the 2 counties of Bischoff, Planitz, and Dallas. And I remember her being perceived as a savior then because she was able to get all of those names translated and put in order. It's a very valuable reference if your ancestors came from either of those 2 counties.
Mm-hmm. And then I think we have a Czech version of some books of the tax rolls from like 1651. So there's a few different things that we have here from that time frame, where it was very important to do a census of the people after the 30 Years' War, which ended in 1648.
Yeah, so the 30 Years' War was from 1618 to 1648. Then there was the inventory, the census in 1651, and I believe these are the tax rolls for 1654. So if you can go see your name there, then you know your ancestors go back at least that far. And there's even a alpha character that determines what kind of home your ancestors were in that book. Then also the lower right book talks about the Fara Lexicon of Bohemia. Felix Grundaker was a German author for a lot of reference books, and I'm happy to see that we've got one of his reference books right here in our own reference section.
Mm-hmm. And those categories and stuff that you find in this book, you can also use to search the books which are now online in the Czech Republic. These old parish books are online, and this book here can tell you which ones to look for when you're doing this research online. So a very helpful tool. And we also have a lot of cemetery records and books on that. This one is just an example of St. George Catholic Cemetery across the river from Ulm and Nicollet County. And here in this list, you see just a ton of German-Bohemian names, as well as a lot of original settlers from different parts of Germany, but a very strong German-Bohemian presence there in St. George. And it's kind of fun to look at these different cemetery books and find some clues to where your ancestors ended up.
So here's an example of someone wanting to know if your family's name was mentioned somewhere. And one example would be to look at a telephone book or a church directory or a cemetery index. And this one on the left is a telephone book. We could use more telephone books, but we have one from New Ulm and one from Sleepyhead. So that's a good starting point to see if your ancestor's name was in that book for that year in that town.
Okay, and then on the picture on the right just shows kind of a list of the Bacha books. We also have some German immigrant books. We've got some Württemberg, Germany, immigration types of things. So we've got a bunch of different things, not totally German-Bohemian, but just kind of across the board of people who maybe immigrated to southern Minnesota that we have here in our collection. Research Center is a lot of different maps. We've got a lot of things on the walls. We can kind of get a feel for where things are in Bohemia. We've got an example here in the top right is the Hagerland, which is far western Bohemia bordering Germany. Some other maps showing the Czech Republic and Germany in historical times that you can see on the right. And then some green maps down on the bottom show the different sections of what's the Czech Republic today. But these maps are kind of cool because they include the original German names and the Czech names today of the villages where your ancestors came from.
Then we also have a local map section or US map section where we've got plat maps for Nicollet County and Brown County for many of the different years. And that's another example of, say, you wanted to know that your ancestors came in this area sometime, but we don't know where. Well, plat maps will show just what part of the county or the township your ancestor was. In addition to that, we've got the overall German-Bohemian maps and atlases. So, for example, we've got highway maps of Germany and Bohemia that would give you a little more detail if you want to drill down to a particular area. We even have some hiking maps for some of the Bohemia sections.
So a lot of fun resources to kind of get an idea of where these people lived and where you can go and see these places today.
One final thing we should mention is we have a genealogical atlas of the United States that shows the location of every county in every state. And I'm told that that's kind of a sought after area if you want to know, like, well, where in the heck is Cook County, Illinois? Only to find out that that's part of current day Chicago because a lot of immigrants came through Cook County, Illinois. And this atlas then will show all the other counties of all the other states.
Yeah, so if you have some things that maybe link here or link to other parts of the United States, there's a few resources we have to help you point in certain directions.
Yeah.
So that's just hopefully giving you a little good reference of what we have in our reference section, and then we'll try to also post and include more information on our other sections with village histories, homeland histories, and some of our family tree information. Okay, so I can see a couple people couldn't quite hear that as well, and so what we're planning to do is maybe re-edit this and then repost it sometime in the future, just so that everybody can hear it a little bit better in case you couldn't hear everything that was posted on there. I noticed some of the images weren't flowing in at the right time, so probably do some editing on that and save that. And then just looking on the side here, we will have, the last one here is, do you have a list of all the family histories on the website? We will have that updated on the website by next week. We've got a website person helping us, and they're working on getting that up there. It was just, we gave them such a big list that that's taking a little bit longer to do, kind of redoing some things that how we had it previously set up on the website. A copy of the Egerland map. That one we have hanging on the wall, and that could possibly be scanned and copies for people if we can set up that. It's kind of large to be able to copy. So we'll save that question and do that. Okay, now I was going to kind of just, one thing I forgot to do in the beginning is I just kind of wanted to acknowledge our current board members. I mean, it really takes a team to keep this going. We're all volunteers doing this and keeping it going. And kind of from the original board members who got it going, it really was a team of people working together to make things happen. And I'm really thankful for the team we have now. We've got me as the president, Pat Eckstein is our vice president, Jenny Eckstein is our treasurer, Harvey Static is our secretary, Gary Wilczek, he's our head man now at the Research Center, and he's here with me today. Pat and Colleen Kretsch, Steve Ubel, Bill Fosnacht, Janet Tower, and Rick Eckstein as well. And everybody does a little part on different things, and especially with the different moves that we've done, especially at the end of August, we decided to move, and within a week we made that happen. So it was a lot of work, and so everybody came and helped out when they could. Oh, Al Forrest is also a board member. And some of you may also know Denny Warda. We've had a long tradition of a Bohemian king with the organization, and Denny Warda is our current king, and he's doing well. He wanted to maybe be here today, but he's hopefully listening, and at 90, almost 94 years old, doing great. So it's kind of fun.
I have a chat question.
Oh, yeah.
Is that newsletters on the website?
There was another question here. Oh, the newsletters on the website, that's something else we're working on too. We had previously a lot of old newsletters, and the newer ones, for some reason, they're not there. So we're getting that reset up and looking for those. We may have to rescan some to do that. And so we're planning to have a whole collection of the newsletters online. So, okay, the next part I want to share with you guys is a little bit more history of what it is to be German-Bohemian. Where did these people come from? This is the part that I really like, because I've been fortunate enough to bring people over on tours and help them connect and learn about their homeland. And I've had the opportunity to travel with some people who were kids going into World War I, and then travel with them. One guy, Robert Fretchel. Robert and I drove all over the Czech Republic and into Poland and visiting people and doing research. And so I've been fortunate enough to cross paths with a lot of people and learn from them and their experiences.
45.
So I'll go back to sharing some of these images. And share. Okay. So a lot of people say, well, my ancestors are German, and they're from where? Then what's today the Czech Republic? That often comes up as, what does that mean? You know, people their ancestors were German. Even when I grew up, I was always very interested in this. And my grandparents just kind of always talked about Germany, not so much Bohemia and what was Czechoslovakia, later Czech Republic, and known as Czechia today. But just kind of going from there. So to give you an idea, here's just a map of Europe. Just kind of for those who don't know, the Czech Republic is right in the middle of the whole Central Europe. And so it was kind of a crossroads for centuries of everything going back to prehistoric times. Bohemia and Moravia make up what's the Czech Republic today. And Bohemia was basically, the name comes from Celtic people that had lived there in BC times. The Romans encountered them. And so the Celtic kind of tribe, B-O-I-I. And so that's kind of how the name Bohemia was derived. And basically that region was known as Bohemia under the Austrian rule up until the end of World War I in 1918. So then this is an older map of Europe, kind of to give you an idea of what it looked like at the end of the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was probably one of the biggest wars that ever happened in Europe up until World War II. And about a third of the population ended up passing away during that time frame from fighting, from disease, from, you know, all kinds of things, not enough food. And so you kind of look at it and you see on the right, there's the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Archduchy of Austria, and all of that light green area was under the Habsburg rule. So they were really an imperial part of that. And then this whole thing was part of the Holy Roman Empire, which was not really holy and not really a total empire, but it's kind of a fun history. But all of the other little places you see on the right is what a lot of what made up Germany today was really hundreds of little duchies and kingdoms and stuff all separated, and Germany wasn't united until 1871. So it was a much different picture in former times, and the Habsburgs, who ruled Austria and Bohemia, were really the powerhouse of all of Europe. And even in the 1500s, the Habsburg family ruled France, and ultimately the holdings here in the United States. And then the family kind of split with two different branches of the family taking over different branches of the empire. And then this is after, there's a lot of history here, which I can cover in a different talk, but Napoleon came through, he abolished the Holy Roman Empire, tried to take over Europe and into Russia, but then he got defeated. And then what was left was kind of this thing where you see on this map, you see Prussia kind of taking up a much bigger area. They were gaining control. In the 1740s, they took part of Silesia, which is kind of the northern part of above the gold there, which is now part of Poland. And so they were gaining control. This is from 1815 to 1866, where they really were looking at trying to create a united German empire again. But Austria was the big powerhouse on that. And the problem with Austria was they were very much related with Hungary and everything else to the right, on the lower right where the list is, that they really didn't fit with the multilingual stuff. And so then I'll show this slide. You started to get, Prussia was again really strong and a lot of disagreements with the Habsburg rulers. And this map shows an area where this fighting was, the area like Sadwa, and area around Landskron, where there was a battle in 1866 that the Austrians lost, basically. And that was in kind of the homeland of Bohemia, in an area where a lot of German Bohemians also lived. And that led to, a few years later, the unification of Germany in 1871. And that kind of, as you see on here, the Landskron area, or this just shows a couple different places. You've got Trappau, which was German area. This last arrow that just popped up is Landskron, near where that battle was. And then Olomouc was like the capital of Moravia. So all of this was Bohemia and Moravia. And between the two, the dotted line in the center is kind of a highlands. So everything kind of has a natural border to it. And Brunn was also a very, very German town prior to the expulsion after World War II. There we go. And this is Landskron. Stopped there a couple years ago, going to a conference just to kind of see what it is and kind of the connections there. And I came across this monument having to do with that loss of the battle there in 1866. So it was right in that area where all this fighting was. But even over all parts of Bohemia after this war, and former times, you know, you lose a war and then the country had to pay reparations. So you had soldiers in different places like Mies or Strebro staying there until they collected enough of the money that was promised when they surrendered and lost the war. So you had these occupying armies in these towns and villages up until everything was paid for after the war. And I think that kind of gave a bad feeling for different reasons to immigrate. My ancestors, some of them immigrated that next year in 1867 when they were about ready to join the army. So, and another kind of fun side note, Landskron, you kind of think, well, my ancestors were from way on the western part, and what connection do I have there? And then last year at a reunion in Germany, some different Warda relatives, they had, after the expulsion, ended up in Germany. And this one family, you know, she was from Landskron and he was from the western part. And so it was just kind of fun that we find that there's these connections all the time, all across what was German-Bohemian lands. So a lot of the people who immigrated to the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, came from these western regions. Joan Steiner, who's, I know, paying attention today, her ancestors and a lot of people in northern Wisconsin came from this Tapel Monastery area and the villages around there. In between there is a castle called Shimda today in Czech, Frauenberg, and it was one of the oldest castle sites. Kind of, you had a string of castles along these border regions to kind of watch the borders for people coming in. And then a lot of people who came to southern Minnesota and New Ulm came from this Bischofteinitz, Taos, Mies area, in this area down in the western regions of Bohemia. This is up just a little bit north of Tapel. Ellbogen Castle was kind of a ruling baron of this northeastern area next to Saxony. This is the Tapel Monastery that I mentioned, Joan, that she had ancestors from villages around there. And then a lot of people in northern Wisconsin ended up coming from the area around this monastery. One of her home villages doesn't exist anymore, Westchessen, and there's one house left there. And a few years ago, we were there together, and I was kind of honored to be a part of that with Joan, and we met a young Czech couple that are restoring this house, and a lot of work, and they have a young son, and decided to make a life in this village where no other houses exist, but this one is still there. So you can kind of see they're making new pillars and columns and really starting from scratch on a lot of this. The other side of the house was actually inhabitable when we were there. This part is, as you can see, not. And then this is the view from this village site. It just was kind of a beautiful scene. And when we drive to these places, I kind of think, wow, this is really far from where my ancestors are from. But then when you stand there and you look, this arrow is pointing to this Frauenberg mountain. So it's one of these mountains where the castle was. There's just a ruin there today that kind of you can see from most of the places in the Homeland area from people around New Ulm, but then a little bit north of there. So it really stands out in kind of this border region. And that was the picture from the beginning of this slideshow, kind of what's left of this ruin there. They think it's probably one of the oldest castles, going back to around 950, something like that. I've seen a couple different things. And so a very prominent castle once upon a time, but all that's left is this tower, and the walls are like 10 meters thick or something like that. And so, or 13 feet thick. So it's really quite neat. And the view there, you can see this is showing the new Autobahn coming from Germany. So those high points there is kind of the border going into Germany. And then this is looking south. So looking south into the Bischofteinitz region, the high mountains to the south there kind of border again to Bavaria on that side. So a lot of the people from New Ulm have ancestors who came from all this village region through what you can see to the horizon. And this is just a sample of a house in a town called Zemschen, kind of in the village, one of the older looking houses. And then this is called Stockau Monastery, going back to the 1200s. There's actually an older story that there was a battle back in the year 1040, a little bit south of here. And the Holy Roman Emperor, I think it was Henry IV or something, he stopped and his army rested here and they built a church on the site as some holy place. And so I'm not sure total of the history of it, but it's really quite cool to see these types of places and learn about the history. And this is a village called Frohnau, just above there, looking down on that monastery. And it's always nice to see some of the old houses and how things kind of were built and looked in former times. So again, that's kind of the Bischofsteinitz region. And then this is Muttersdorf, kind of the people who've traveled in the past is kind of a scene that is familiar to people who've taken trips and have ancestors from this village. And then this is a older photo that we got from one of our members, Ron Saffert shared this. He got from an uncle, but this is just an older view of Muttersdorf from the other direction. And I think it's up in the direction of where there's a Jewish cemetery. And then this is the church in Muttersdorf today. And this is kind of fun. This is a Saffert home in a town that was called Großgorschin. And this family goes back to this site on the records back to about 1604. It's really neat that there's a photo like this that exists of this old homestead because the village doesn't exist anymore today. It's pretty close to the border region where a lot of villages were raised during communist times and the Iron Curtain. And so this was kind of fun to see this. I shared the tract with George here earlier, and that became kind of a standardized tract in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But looking at, this is the Saffert family before the son immigrated in the 1890s. And, you know, you can kind of take a look at, this is the standard kind of dress that they had and kind of a prominent family in this village of Großgorschin.
58.
Okay, and then he came and he married Elizabeth Hoffman, and this is a wedding in 1907 here in Siegel Township, just outside of New Ulm. And this one's kind of fun because a lot of the original members of the family were there. This also came from Ron Saffert, and it was kind of fun to post this on Facebook and kind of for myself, just find out what wedding this was and seeing, just identifying some of the people. So going forward, we want to post more of this stuff on Facebook and try to get more conversations going there to help people with their research and maybe help identify some of these old pictures and stuff. So this is kind of a view, again, kind of in that southern, just north of the town of Bischofsteinitz, and looking to the west, and the mountains are kind of the border region between what was Bohemia, now the Czech Republic, going into Bavaria. And so that's the homeland, and this is kind of the new homeland here in New Ulm for at least a group of German Bohemians, and that's a monument that was put up here in New Ulm, which is only about a block away from our location here today. And so kind of fun to share that. I mean, we started out as an organization kind of focused on German Bohemians here, but as we've made connections, we've got information related to German Bohemians all over the place, and looking to kind of grow that and help people with their research and connections. And so, yeah, so that's kind of closing that. I just thought I would share that, you know, if you ever have the opportunity to travel, I like to share these things if people don't have the opportunity to travel. But, you know, if you're looking for information, whether I'm doing a tour, check out my website, or just information, I'm happy to help you with, you know, planning your own trip if you're planning to go explore on your own. Most things this year have been changed to next year in 2021, but I do have still a small group that's planning to go in September, and we're looking for more people there. If everything is safe to travel, we're not going to go unless things are safe and people are vaccinated. And then following that, there's a few people that want to do a heritage tour, and we were talking about going from Luxembourg through Bohemia into Prague. And so we've got some tentative plans there too. And so if anybody's interested, just send me a message and I can keep you updated as the planning progresses, and we'll see how it goes for the rest of this year traveling. So thanks for joining us today, and your continued support through memberships and donations make it possible for us to keep doing what we're doing here. Yeah, and we're just really looking at trying to improve what we're doing, take on maybe some bigger projects with translating things and doing that kind of stuff to make some more resources available for people and tell more of the story. So please follow us on Facebook, share your stories, also share your stories so we can include them in our newsletter and stuff. And then checking out our website for items for sale. And let me switch back here.
Where can we send 2021 dues to?
Oh, very good. So question for 2021 dues. Do you have a newsletter? I can just say the address. We'll answer that question in a second, but you can just go to our website, German-Bohemian-Heritage-Society.com, and has the information. You can sign up online, or you can mail in a check to our PO box. Let's see if we got
822.
So yeah, our address is PO Box 822, Newell, Minnesota 56073-0822. And the membership dues are $25 a year. Okay, and then one thing I just wanted to highlight too, I did mention, our website has different things, but we've got some books and things for sale. This one's kind of fun. It's a collection of old stories from our old newsletters. It would take a person years to kind of compile all this information, but it gives people a good kind of understanding of heritage, culture, a little bit on immigration. So kind of a fun read as far as different things. So a lot of short stories. The cookbooks actually was kind of looking at those the other day, and I was getting kind of hungry, and some of them, like the cookbook #2, has really some cool stories and history and things in some stories along with recipes, and both of them have a lot of cool favorites in there. So look for those and enjoy. So that's kind of fun. We've been trying out some things there, and so maybe next year, if we can meet in person, we can try out some more delicacies together. Any more questions as far as that? If you want, you can unmute and ask your question via voice or chat. Okay, and then we'll definitely have this posted on YouTube that you can review this again. And then for the tutorial part, I think Gary and I'll just expand on that a little bit, maybe break it up and post some of those on YouTube or on our website so that you guys can review more of what we have. And then in the next week, we should have things updated to see a little bit more. You can search the collection online and see the things that might be helpful for your research. So, well, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's a sunny day and getting a little bit warmer here in Minnesota, and it's great to see familiar faces and great to see some new faces as well. So thank you, and just check here if there's any more questions. And yeah, well, thank you very much, and we'll end here, and you guys all have a great rest of your weekend.